Next, Inside Edition correspondent Lisa Guerrero tells us about her new memoir, Warrior, My Path to Being Brave. Don't go away.
We have watched our next guest fearlessly seek out justice for victims as the chief investigative correspondent for Inside Edition.
Yes.
Now she's helping others find courage of their own by sharing lessons from her life in the new book, Warrior, My Path to Being Brave. Please welcome Lisa Guerrero.
Hi. Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, Lisa, let's start with the title of the book,
Yes.
Warrior.
Yeah.
Explain why that word is so meaningful to you.
So my mother was a Chilean immigrant that came to this country when she was 16 years old. Her last name was Guerrero, Lucy Guerrero, which in Spanish means warrior. And when I was 8 years old, she was diagnosed with lymphoma, and she only had a couple of years to live. She was 29. And she pulled me aside and she said, Lisita, I never want you to forget that your last name means warrior. You were born to fight.
Wow.
Got chills. So that's why I named it Warrior.
Wow, it's incredible. And you wrote in your book that the first time you found your inner warrior is when your brother was dealing with a bully.
Yes.
Now, how did that become the defining moment for you?
I mean, we're allowed to bully our little brothers and sisters, but if somebody outside our circle does, forget it. So I didn't realize that, what warrior meant and what being courageous was and what being brave was until I realized that you are brave in service of somebody else. And so when my little brother, who was a huge Star Wars fan, he was probably about 7 years old at the time, somebody stole his Star Wars lunchbox. And he ran up to me and he had a big welt on his head because they hit him. And I ran back to Phoebe Hearst Elementary, and I found him on the playground, the bully. I grabbed that lunchbox back, and I slugged him. And I'm not proud of it, because you shouldn't use violence. However, what I did learn is that nobody ever picked on me or my little brother again. So sometime you have to stand up to bullies. You must push back.
Well, you definitely have some guts. And you showed that when you were trailblazing as a sportscaster in a time where not a lot of women were doing it, but you faced a lot of discrimination. Can you talk about that?
When I started in sports, it was the 80s. And in the 90s, I was usually the only woman covering sports in the Dodgers locker room or Lakers, Chargers, UCLA, USC. And so, of course, back then, I faced a lot of misogyny in sports. But I also learned that, anytime you are the subject of toxicity or of criticism, you have a choice, right? And your choice is either to absorb it and to believe that criticism or push back and say, I'm not going to believe you, I'm going to believe in myself. So I learned a lot of good lessons when I was a sportscaster. However, because of the day that I was covering sports, there was a lot of attention paid to what I looked like rather than the content of my questions. And so when I was finally hired, I was in sports for 10 years. I was finally hired as the sideline reporter for Monday Night Football on ABC. But there was so much negative criticism against me because they said, you're a former cheerleader, you're a former model and actress. How can you be taken seriously in sports? And I believed it. And that coupled with a boss that was verbally abusive to me, who was yelling at me, well, I'd be reporting in front of 40 million people live, and I'd have my boss yelling at me. So I started a downward spiral of depression and anxiety that eventually led to me having a miscarriage during one of the games live. And I didn't want to tell anybody at halftime. I went in the officials' locker room and I cried, and I missed my mother. And I said, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to put a smile on my face, I'm going to be the brave warrior that she wants me to be, and I'm going to finish this game. But the reason I write about that is I don't want anybody else to have to do that, right? That isn't what we should be. We need to be able to talk about these issues. So I learned a lot, which I write about in my book. But eventually I was fired from Monday Night Football. And I thought to myself, what am I going to do next? Again, you have choices. You either believe the negativity or you say, I'm going to rebuild myself and rebrand my career. What am I good at? I now have empathy because I've gone through these traumas. And I'm going to be an investigative reporter and help other survivors. So that's what I've done.
To be released from something uncomfortable. So you were released for something uncomfortable, and then you funneled it into something great.
Well, so the book is called Warrior, not Victim.
There
right?
it is.
So we
There
have
it
an opportunity to turn our pain into power.
That's right.
We must do that. We must do that. So when my mother told me, you are a guerrero, you were born to fight. Now I know what that means. But it took me 5 decades to figure it out. I don't want you guys to have to take 5 decades to figure that out. But finally I did. I realized that I'm here to help others.
That's right.
You have so many great lessons in the book. But talk about the bravery muscle and how to strengthen that.
I don't believe anybody is born brave, Lisa. I think that we learn to be brave through facing challenges. So in my book, I give you exercises on how you can become more brave every day. But I believe that bravery is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger you become. So today, everybody must find a time when you would typically be worried about confrontation, or you don't want to try a new lipstick, or you don't want to be the first person to raise your hand in class. I say do that one brave thing every day. And then the next day you do another brave thing, and the next day. And suddenly, when the time comes when you really need to be a badass, your bravery is going to be right there where you need it, and you are going to break out.
That's great. That is so great.
Lisa, thank you so much for being here. I feel like we should have wrote everything down. Well, it's written down right here.
Right there.
It's written down right here. Warrior is available now, and everyone in our studio audience is going home with a copy. If you're in Southern California, Lisa will be signing books at the Barnes & Noble in Huntington Beach on Saturday. And be sure to tune in to Inside Edition every day weekday. Check your local listings. We'll be right back. Thank you. Before we go, we have something special that will help you with your fitness goals. It's time for today's must-have giveaway.
Don't just count your steps, make your steps count. Download the XPass app and earn top-tier rewards just for walking or taking fitness classes. Guess what? Everyone in our studio audience today is going home with an XPass gift certificate to try their Diamond Plan. This giveaway retails for just under $200.
We had such a great time today. Thank you to Morris Chestnut and Lisa Rinna for co-hosting with us. Tune in tomorrow to see what we're talking about right here on The Talk.